All right, welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I'm going to be doing my review of Haas's 2024 F1 season. Now for Haas, 2024 I think was a much better year than I think many, even the most diehard Haas fans probably would have expected. Especially given how bad their 2023 season was. Now, a large part of the reason why they were able to improve so much, particularly in race day performance in 2024, was the fact that the rear suspension that they used, which is the same as Ferrari's, was much better at dealing with managing the tires and not just overheating them and killing them early in the stint, as happened so often in 2023. As always, first we're going to take a look at their two drivers, Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, and take a look at their head-to-head race statistics. Now, of course, Oliver Behrman raced for the Haas team as well for two races, covering for Magnussen once because of his race ban, and a second time because he got ill at unfortunately Brazil of all the Grand Prix, which would have been a great opportunity for him to score big points given all of the chaos that happened that day. But those two races, for most of the statistics won't be included, just for Hulkenberg, just so you know. Now, let's see if we can get this going. Okay, here we go. So, first we're going to take a look at qualifying statistics. So, for qualifying head-to-head, not particularly close between these two drivers. Hulkenberg, big advantage there, 17-5 in qualifying head-to-head. And when you look at median qualifying gap, 0.23 seconds in Hulkenberg's favor. Pretty big gap, especially given Hulkenberg's age. It is pretty surprising that the gap would be so big. I think Magnussen's about, I did a video about this, so I should know. Magnussen's a 92 birthday, Hulkenberg's an 87. So that's five years difference. Yeah, 5 years difference between the two of them. So Magnussen, young, early 30s, Hulkenberg late 30s. So again, you would expect a pretty big, somewhat of a decline in qualifying performance between those 2 years. Now, getting back on track, Hulkenberg average starting position this year 11.59, for Magnussen 14.68. So again, about 4 positions difference between the two, and that's definitely going to have a big impact on your ability to score points on race day. When you look at average finishing position, 10.65 for Hulkenberg, Magnussen 12.75. So Magnussen was able to make up more ground from his starting position, but that makes sense. And it really suggested that Magnussen was qualifying a little bit out of position, from time to time. Now, when you look at some of the race day stats, so for just points, for example, Hulkenberg 41 points to Magnussen 16, so almost more than twice as many points. Pretty big difference there. When you look at rank in the Constructors' Championship, Hulkenberg ended up finishing 11th, just pipped at the end by Gasly, the final race of the season, and Magnussen was in 15th. Race head-to-head, not particularly close either, 15-4 in races where both drivers finished. So again, pretty comprehensive, teammate head-to victory in Hulkenberg's favor in the teammate head-to-head in both qualifying and in the race. When you look at my expected points model, however, both drivers were below 100, so again, that says that they were a little bit below expected. For Hulkenberg, negative 5.72, which comes out to 86%, so 86 is still like an okay number. It's not great. Ideally, you want to be above 100, but it's not the end of the world. And again, in comparison, Magnussen negative 7.83, which comes out to 64%. So again, still quite a bit better than his teammate Magnussen. Now, when you look at average power rankings over the whole season, and for Hulkenberg, this is going to be the whole season, so including races where he raced against Behrman, 9.04, which came out 8th. So I actually thought that Hulkenberg was the best driver in the best of the rest over the course of the season on average, whereas for Magnussen, he was 13.18, which ranked 15th. So a pretty big difference between the two drivers as well. Now, when you look at Hulkenberg and Magnussen as their time as teammates together, this was their second and final year together. As of course, one's leaving F1, and again another driver, Hulkenberg, is going over to Sauber for 2025. But you can kind of see the progression from 2023, 2024, and look at kind of the trends. So for qualifying, gap was almost identical between the 2 years, so not a big difference there. But when you look at the race day performance, it actually went from about a difference of 1 in Hulkenberg's favor in 2023 to 1.5 7. I think it's about 1.7 in 2024. So the gap actually got bigger. And I think for me, I think part of that was the car was better. So the team, Hulkenberg, was able to score points on more regular occasions. And again, last year, most races, basically, Haas would start, let's say 9th and 11th, and then they would just go backwards to 16th and 17th by the end of the Grand Prix. So Hulkenberg was able to actually show what he could do on a race day, and not he wasn't hindered as much by the tires. So I don't think it was Magnussen got noticeably worse. I think it was just that Hulkenberg was actually able to show what he could do. Given that he was still such a strong qualifier in F1. Now, when you look at the team stats, I do think that the team will be quite miffed not to end up with 6th in the Constructors' Championship. Now, they end up with 58 points, which again ranks 7th. They were very, very close, but it was very close between them and Alpine in the end. Went all the way to the final race of the season. But when you look at average pole gap, so again, a stat for qualifying performance, and again for average minimum finishing position, which is a stat for race day performance, they've ranked 6th for both. So 1.05 seconds was their average pole gap over the season, and their average minimum finishing position was 9.38. And again, if you're 6th best in both qualifying performance and race day performance, you should end up 6th in the Constructors' Championship. So the fact that they're not 6th, I think they're going to be a little bit disappointed by. But that being said, I do think still a much better season than 2023. Now, when you look at their pole gap over the course of the season, here I'll get my cursor over, see if we can actually see it. So start of the season, of course, the very first qualifying session of the year in Bahrain was, I think, a little bit it was again, I think, a little bit better than their average over the course of the season. So again, it will skew this graph a little bit given it was a sample size of 1, but this is the 3-race rolling average over the course of the season. So you basically, for the first part of the season, they were basically between 1 second and a second and a half, and then towards the middle third of the season, they were about a second off pole. And again, they were generally one of the better teams in qualifying, usually not the best over 1 lap in that second group of teams. And it was only really when you got to the end part of the season here where they actually looked like they were the best car in the bottom 5 in qualifying as well. So again, a little bit interesting to see that the qualifying performance was not as good as it was for some of the other teams in the midfield. But again, you can see last quarter of the season as well, big improvement. They went from about being a second and a half off pole in Monza, Azerbaijan, to being basically about 7-8 tenths of a second off pole by the end of the season, which is, again, really good improvement. And again, those last couple races, a lot of the big teams will stop development at that point. So they're not bringing upgrades, whereas, again, for the smaller teams, perhaps they're still bringing upgrades, that kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see what the performance over 1 lap is like next year. Two new drivers, of course, Behrman and Ocon. I'm not sure if either of them are as good of a qualifier. Oh dear, the hail is quite something. The mic will definitely pick that up. But that being said, Behrman showed during his 2 races at Haas that he actually outqualified Hulkenberg both times, despite the fact that he just kind of stepped in. In Brazil, it was on a track he'd never raced before, which was even more impressive. So I think, at least in Behrman's case, and again, Ocon's a known quantity. He's a pretty good qualifier, not an elite qualifier. So again, I think, for qualifying performance next year, they should be okay. Now, when you look at their race day performance over the course of the season, broken down by quarters, when you look at points, again, they were pretty inconsistent, actually. So first quarter of the season, they scored less than 10 points. Second quarter, they scored about 20. Third quarter, they scored about a handful of points, 3 to 4 points. And then the last quarter, they scored almost 30. So a lot of variation in performance there, and that variation tracks with their average finishing position, suggesting that it was not so much luck, but it was just kind of they were fluctuating quite a bit from track to track. So for the first quarter of the season, it was about 12. Second quarter is about 10. Was the average finishing position. Third quarter, again, a little bit below 12, maybe closer to 13. And then the final quarter, it was almost 9. So again, quite a bit of fluctuation over the course of the season, and that's something that the team is going to, again, if they want to take that next level, not necessarily compete with the top 4 teams, but if they want to be a clear 5th best team next year, having that consistency from race to race, I think, will go a long way to kind of solidifying that spot, that fifth, that best of the rest spot in F1. Now, finishing up, taking a look at their year-to-year trends in F1 for performance. Starting in 2020, of course, that was a year that was hindered quite a bit by the fact that they were using a very, very bad Ferrari engine. 2021, of course, they didn't improve the car at all, and they had a massive downgrade, I think, objectively speaking, in their driver lineup, taking Magnussen and Grosjean out and bringing in Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. So again, you can see for 2020 and 2021, again, decrease in one-lap performance and race day performance before a massive improvement 2022 with the new regulations, which was always the intention after they basically sacrificed 2021. You can see actually for qualifying performance, they've been very, very consistent all through this set of regulations. You can see the blue lines basically almost flat, 2022 to 23 to 24. Race day performance, you can see 2022, it was a little bit worse than their qualifying performance. And then 2024, it actually got in 2022, and then 2023 got worse before this year getting a lot better and actually being better than the qualifying performance, which again is a little bit normal, because you of course have DNFs and stuff, which will make the finishing position stats a little bit better than the qualifying performance stats. So for Haas for 2025, I think expectations will be pretty high. Of course, they're going to be having the partnership with Toyota come in as well. The fact they're going to have two pretty young, pretty good drivers. Again, Ocon's not necessarily young. He's almost 30 at this point, but at the same time, I think their driver lineup should be pretty good, and it shouldn't be a big issue unless they suddenly come out with a championship-winning car. For where they're expected to be for 2025, it's a pretty decent driver lineup. So I think the big thing for them is making sure that the race pace stays as strong as it has been 2024, and you basically don't go back to a situation like 2019 or 2023 where the car is absolutely awful on race day, and regardless of what the drivers do with it in qualifying, it basically sinks like a stone on Sunday. That's basically would be the worst case scenario for the team, would be basically going back to 2023 like situation. So there you go. There's my review of Haas's 2024 F1 season. Again, pretty good season by their standards. I think quite a bit better than their expectations going into it. So again, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.